Very good afternoon, all the viewers. Welcome to Dr. T.B. Rajashekar 15th Memorial Lecture 2020. The title of today's lecture is The State of Open Access, Where Does It Stand and Where is it Heading? The lecture will be delivered by Mr. N.V. Sathyanarayana, Chief Managing Director, Informatics India Limited, and it will be chaired by Professor Subbiah Arunachalam, who is a visiting professor at the DST Center for Policy Research, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. So at the outset, I would sincerely thank Mr. Sathyanarayana and Professor Subbiah Arunachalam for accepting our invitation and facilitating the memorial lecture. Thank you very much, sir. Just a moment. Yeah. So the flow of the event would be as follows. I will be briefly introducing late Dr. T.B. Rajashekar for those who may not have had an opportunity to know about him. Then I will be briefly talking about NCSI Net Foundation, the organization which is conducting or organizing this event. And then I will introduce Professor Subbiah Arunachalam, who will be chairing the talk. He in turn will be introducing Mr. Sathyanarayana, followed by a question answer session, and then vote of thanks to be proposed by Mr. Dr. Rajendra Babu. So a few slides about late Dr. T.B. Rajashekar. Rajashekar completed his bachelor's degree in library information science from Mysore University, completed his associateship from DRTC Bangalore, and after joining NCSI, he also completed his PhD from Pune University. After completing his associateship from DRTC, took up a job at the National Informatics Center, New Delhi, worked there for about 5 years. He briefly moved to British Library and spent a very short period there before joining the National Center for Science Information in 1983 as a scientific officer. He became quickly rose to become the principal scientific officer at the NCSI, and he also held honorary position as associate chairman of the National Center for Science Information. National Center for Science Information itself was established in the year 1983 to provide selective dissemination of information to cater to the needs of students and researchers at the Indian universities. Because during that point in time, many of the universities and colleges, they never had access to secondary databases. So with that being the situation, the think tank, especially late Mr. Iyengar, who was the librarian at the Indian Institute of Science, thought about coming out with a center which will provide computer-based selective dissemination of information to cater to the needs of students and researchers in Indian universities. So NCSI itself was established in 1983 to provide a selective dissemination of information to Indian researchers, especially in the field of chemistry, biological sciences, mathematical sciences, physics, engineering, geographical sciences, geological sciences. The software required for selective dissemination of information was developed in-house at NCSI. And at that point in time, NCSI was only one of the 6 centers in the world which was providing selective dissemination of information. Now, NCSI had many firsts to its credit under the leadership of late Dr. Rajashekar. And NCSI website, okay, which was a static website, was one of the earliest to come up on the campus. Now you can imagine that a science institute like IISc, not many departments had their own websites during the early 90s. Okay, so NCSI was one of the earliest centers on the campus and also in the country to have its website, a static website. Now, this is a screenshot of the NCSI's website. This is from the Wayback Machine. And I thought some of our next generation professionals would be interested to know how a web page looked in the early 90s. Okay, so you can always go to the Wayback Machine and see how the older websites looked like if you are interested. So under TBR's leadership, NCSI was one of the earliest to conduct workshops on internet-related technologies. Now, during the late 80s and the early 90s, okay, the technologies were developing very rapidly. Okay, now it started with email, then the file transfer protocols, the Telnet protocol, Gopher, and then it all culminated with World Wide Web technology. Okay, so a lot of changes were happening, and then these technologies were very relevant to the libraries, and they were being effectively used to provide information services. And it was also important that the professionals had to be exposed to these emerging technologies. And with that in mind, Rajashekar and the team at NCSI conducted many workshops to expose the professionals to the emerging technologies. Okay, and one of the other important activity that NCSI was associated with was the training program. The training program, initially it had a different title. Later on, it was transformed into information and knowledge management. It was one of the most sought after training program in the country. And then hundreds of students have graduated from this training program. And today they are placed very well in all domains, starting from academics to corporate to entrepreneurship, you name it, and our trainees are there. As I said, NCSI has many firsts to its credit under the leadership of late TBR. He's popularly known amongst his colleagues as TBR and amongst his friends and close associates as Raju. He set up country's first email-based discussion forum. So I'm sure most of you who are viewing this lecture would be members of the LIST Forum discussion forum. So it was started way back in 1994. It was using a different software then. Now today we are using Mailman, and today we have close to 6,000 subscribers on LIST Forum. So those of you who are not yet on the LIST Forum, so I have given a link here, and you can always do a Google search for LIST Forum and then enroll yourself as a member to the discussion forum. So earlier I had shown you the screenshot of a static web page which NCSI had designed. So we were also one of the earliest to develop a backend database-driven portal. Okay, so that portal was called the SciGate, Science Information Gateway. So I'll show you the screenshot of SciGate shortly. Okay. So we also, under the leadership of Dr. Rajashekar, developed a gateway service called eJournals Gateway. It's called as Electronic Journals Information System. So we also had set up the country's first interoperable institutional repository, and it went live in 2002. So today we have more than 50,000 IISc publications as part of this institutional repository. So this is the screenshot of SciGate, okay, which is the database-driven website. So again, this has been taken from the Wayback Machine, from the Internet Archive. So this is the screenshot of the eJournals Gateway that I was talking about. Okay. So TBR had handled several research and consultancy projects funded by the national and international agencies. He had organized several national and international workshops on the themes Internet for Information Professionals, digital libraries, institutional repositories, content management, etc. And he was an ardent proponent of open access. Late Dr. Rajashekar was on many committees, including the CODATA, and had contributed to the establishment of InfluNet and INDEST. He was fellow of Society of Information Science, and he also had many publications, both in the international journals, national journals, conference papers, and he had contributed significantly for the development of Greenstone Digital Library. Okay, so in his untimely death in June 2005, we lost one of the finest information scientists, a digital library, and above all, a very humble human being. Once, ironically, once he had remarked that to one of his students that one day we all end up in photo frames. What mattered in life was what one leaves behind for others. So he has left behind a rich professional legacy for us, and it is our responsibility to take forward the legacy he has left behind. Okay. So when uh, around 2000, the staff and the NCSI net students, both present and past, then students and the students who had already completed the NCSI net program, training program. So we established an informal association called NCSI Net Association in 2000 as an informal association, and all the staff and the students were part of this association. The main objective of the association was to keep its members abreast of the developments in the field of LIS and related domains, and to create a virtual network of all the members. So this was achieved by conducting professional programs like monthly lectures, and then journal club. And also we had created an exclusive discussion forum for all the members of NCSI Net Association, and that discussion, email-based discussion forum like this forum continues to exist even today. So in 2013, we registered NCSI Net Association as a charitable trust, and now it's called as NCSI Net Foundation. So NCSI Net Foundation is predominantly is active in conducting two activities in honor and memory of late Dr. Rajashekar. One is this annual lecture, which we usually conduct in the month of June, and the other is the annual seminar for the benefit of students and the emerging professionals, which we usually conduct in the month of November or December every year. So we also collaborate with other professional bodies, and recently we collaborated with LIS Academy in conducting a very successful webinar lectures during May, June 2020. So that's about Rajashekar and NCSI Net Foundation. And coming to today's lecture, so as I've already said, the state of open access, where does it stand and where is it heading, will be delivered by Mr. Sathyanarayana of Informatics, and it will be chaired by Professor Subbiah Arunachalam, who is a DST-CPR visiting professor at DST-CPR. So it's my honor to briefly introduce Professor Subbiah Arunachalam. So Professor Arunachalam is currently a visiting professor at the DST Center for Policy Research, Indian Institute of Science, and is also a distinguished fellow at the Center for Internet and Society at Bangalore. Earlier on, he has been an editor of scientific journals at CSIR New Delhi and the Indian Academy of Sciences, Bangalore. He is an honorary fellow of SILIP and a founding member of Society for Scientometrics and Informatics. He has always been interested in improving access to information, but it is after reading 1994 Subversive Proposal article by Stephen Arnott, he became an ardent promoter of open access. For those who may not be aware of Subversive Proposal, it's a posting made by Stephen Arnott, which actually initiated the open access movement. He also had invited Arnott for a talk at the MS Swaminathan Research Foundation in 2000, where Professor Subbiah Arunachalam was a volunteer, and he was also a distinguished fellow at the MSSRF for almost 12 years. So subsequently, he also organized many workshops and conferences on OA-related topics in Chennai, Bangalore, New Delhi, and Thiruvananthapuram. He also mobilized funds from various agencies to bring people to India. They were all open access specialists or proponents or practitioners, okay? So some of these leading figures included Alan Gilchrist, Stephen Arnott, Barbara Crisop.
I'm not able to see myself.
Leslie Carr, Alma Swan, John Walensky, Abel Packer. Professor Arun, as he is popularly known as,
I
not only
just see,
pioneered OS advocacy, but also cytometrics research, so much so, he's been called as the Garfield of India. So this is a great honor, really, to be called as a Garfield of India. And Mr. Open Access. He was instrumental in the CSIR, DST, DBT, and CGIR adopting system-wide open access policies. Technology journalist Richard Pointer has interviewed him 3 times.
still not.
Advocacy and cytometrics. While Arun was with MSSRF, he had conducted 3 South-South Exchange ICT for development workshops for development workers from Africa, Asia, and Latin America. He was on the board of Global Knowledge Partnership for several years. He's been on the editorial boards of Journal of Information Science,
Francis.
Cytometrics,
That is enough.
understanding of science and current science. His interests include cytometrics, science policy, information science, public understanding of science, openness in scholarly communication, ICT for development and rural knowledge centers, and improving information access both for scientists and for the rural poor. So thank you very much, sir. It's an honor for us that you are presiding over the session, and over to Professor Arun to chair the lecture. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Francis. When Francis called me one day a few weeks ago to ask me if I would like to preside over a talk the NCSI Foundation is organizing. And he told me the talk would be given by Satya. So I jumped at it immediately. Not only because Satya is the right person to talk about open access, and also because Satya has been a lifelong friend, a very dear friend for more than 40 years. And he asked me to introduce Satya. I do not think this audience requires any introduction to Satya. All of you know him very well. Anyone connected with the information activities in India would certainly know who is he. Stable internet connection. Satya started his career as a librarian, as Francis pointed out, and he worked at first at the Institute of Science in Bangalore, then at HMT, then at Smith, Plain & French. So he has experience at an engineering company. After doing all that, he thought it was time to start his own company. That is how Informatics came about. He's also associated with many information-related activities, such as InTech 93, National Conference on Digital Libraries, InfoVision, the first International Information Industry Summit, and so on. Hardly any activity in India connected with the information or information industry you can mention without associating it with Satya. He has also received several awards, including the Young Information Scientist Award in '91 and the Government of Karnataka Award, Best Library Award in 2006. Apart from all this, he is a great human being. His hospitality. I mean, anyone who goes into his office, he will treat them as if they are very special. There are so many people whom he had treated well, whom he had taken to nice dinner, lunch, and so on. And money never matters to him. He's a businessman, all right, but it was always like as if he's a philanthropist. Now, I invite Satya to deliver his talk for the day. Satya.
Yeah, I'm online. Good afternoon, friends. Thank you, Arun, for your kind remarks, and thank you, Francis. Thank you, NCS Synod, for inviting me to deliver this lecture. It's a great honor indeed, and it's a privilege for me to deliver this lecture, which is delivered by my dear friends like Professor Arunachalam, whom I call Arun, and people like Dr. Ram Ramaswamy, Dr. Ramani, Professor N.J. Rao, and many of my senior colleagues in library profession, whom I consider as thought leaders like Ravichandra Rao, Gowda, Siddhamalaya, etc. It's indeed a great honor. Thank you again, NCS. And I'm particularly excited on this occasion to talk to you, talk about this topic, particularly because of my long association with Raju, Dr. Rajashekar, whom I happen to know for more than almost 50 years now. My interaction started with him when he was studying in DRTC, continued when he was with NIC and whatnot. So it was a very long association. Let me just open my screen. I'm slightly missing the. Can you all see the screen?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. You know, I was telling you about Raju, remembering him. We remember things or people only when we forget. Raju is a personality which is just impossible to forget. He has left many footprints which have made an impact, not only on my life, but on the life of several people. And, you know, every day you use something which Raju created, LIS Forum. And if we want to be connected with our friends in the library profession, I don't think we can do without LIS Forum at all. And you know, I particularly have a very close association with him, which I remember him always, because in 2000, 2001, he worked with us at Informatics, coming on sabbatical from Indian Institute of Science. And it was perhaps the first time in India, a premier institute agreed to depute on sabbatical its staff to a private company. And that was the time we developed JGate. In fact, when I was talking to Raju for several times, I was telling him, look, why don't you come in, join us for a year or two, and let's develop something. And I did not have any idea what we are going to develop. By then, we were already having certain products on CD-ROM. We had half a dozen products on CD-ROM by then. Our internet was just coming in. It was in, but in India, it was yet to take a shape. And that was the time he joined. And in fact, the whole idea of JGate came up after he joined us as a natural progression for our business, in fact. Now, today we have a product, and imagine he's the architect behind this product, which I conceived in those days. Now, that product has sustained, survived, and we are going to come out with the JGate 3 sometime before the end of this year. And another thing I always remember is, his passion for library technology. And he used to write, I used to bring out a magazine called You and I, and he used to regularly contribute. There was a feature on digital library, which all the articles are now published in a book we brought out on the 25th year of our company. And he used to talk about an idea which even now in my mind, that we should think of coming out with a DL in a box. It's almost like, today something a little similar to, but not entirely like a discovery service we talk about, which only takes care of discovery part. But what he intended at that time as a DL in a box becomes the main thing in the library, which integrates everything, the discovery, management. In fact, the world is thinking of something like that, what we call LSP, library, it's called Library Service Platform. It's being thought about in the last 3 years. It's basically about integrating discovery and management of library functions in a seamless way. So this is something the world is working today, which Raju thought about it more than 20 years ago. So friends, I'm really indebted to NCSINet for this opportunity where I can not just remember, which is something Raju always in our mind, I have an opportunity to talk about what was very close to his heart. One of the reasons why I selected this topic, and the current topic, is open access. You would see the tribute Arun has given to Raju in a statement that he is India's open access pioneer and dedicated OA champion. And in fact, we had a product called JGate, Open JGate, which we had to close it for several reasons. And the whole idea of Open JGate started when Raju was with us, saying we must spin off a separate free product, which we did and ran it for more than a few years. And maybe we should revisit that. Raju's memory is always alive in my mind. And the open access movement is something he has greatly contributed. I'm particularly excited and happy that Arun is chairing this session. I'm also a bit nervous because he is the most knowledgeable person in our field. I would call him a kind of a rishi in our profession, who is always, although he comes from a scientific profession, he was doing his research in IISc in chemistry, and then moved to science journalism, editing journals in CSIR, and he developed a great interest in information science and worked very closely with Garfield for long. And thank you, Arun, for presiding over this function where I am talking. And moving to the subject of today's discussion. Now, I'm going to talk to you on a few issues concerning with open access. Open access is a very vast subject, and so vast that it's a big job today for us to keep track of what is happening. And imagine it's just about a 20-year-old development. And although the Budapest declaration is credited with the beginning, it goes back, in fact, not to Budapest, even earlier also. You must be knowing that, the scholarly publishers Spark was initiated by Library Group, keeping in mind open access, driving the open access. And before that, you are all aware how the preprint mechanism became a driver for starting ePrint archive, what we call archive, ARXIV, and all that. I'm not going to get into the history of open access. It's now it's shorter but too deep. Now I'll focus on a few key issues. One on the copyright, which is at the center of the open access debate, but not really focused as much as it should have been focused. And briefly touch upon OA types more as an update, and look at the state of the growth, the growth of OA until now, and where is it going to land us in the next 5 years based on well-researched models. And more important, I would like to focus my talk more on the business models. In fact, OA is still begging business models even after 20 years. And also India's story. India has spun its own open access story, which is again caught in a web of confusion and challenges. So friends, let me begin with the copyright. And if you talk about the beginning of open access, we all know, as I mentioned, Budapest Declaration and all that, there is a close connect between the open access and the India's freedom movement, which goes back, takes us back to 100 years ago. Now, I will show you something, how it, where it started in a way, particularly when I'm talking beginning with the copyright. Now, can you see this?
Yes.
When Mahatma Gandhi was returning from South Africa, he had already made up his mind the need for, getting rid of the colonial control of India and colonial governance of India. And he wrote a book while in the ship, that same famous, the Hindi version of that, Swaraj. And it was published, Indian Home Rule. Now, this book was first published in Gujarati, and very interestingly, it was the Gujarati version was banned by British government, and he immediately brought out an English version, and the Britishers did not bother about it, thinking that the elite of freedom is not something the elite of India, English-speaking elite of India would be least bothered about. Now, that thinking allowed this book to be alive. And what is interesting from the open access is, you just see this. Now you see, this was Gandhi thought of making it open access. And in the copyright statement, he said, all rights unreserved, in the sense, no rights reserved. What a great thought of open access right at the time. And Gandhi has had a great tradition for India to go open access. And let us remember Gandhi's open access, it was not just a freedom movement, it is also a movement for making the knowledge free. Okay. Now, talking about the copyright confusion, I would like to, talk about where this whole, what you call the freedom movement started when, OA movement started. All of you remember Steve Harnott, strongly advocated the idea that the only way for the world to go open, the scholarly communication to go open, is every author who has got the right to archive his article should archive, should start it. It started with author archiving of his manuscript. Now, when you talk about archiving author's manuscript before publishing, now there are two levels. One is before sending the paper to publisher, what you call preprint or e-print, which goes into something like archive. Now, that the moment the author creates the manuscript, it has a copyright. That is author's copyright. Now, author sends it to publisher. Now it goes from one publisher to another publisher depending on who accepts it finally. After sending the paper to a publisher, the publisher, if once it is cleared by the peer review and he does the editing, and the edited version, post peer reviewed edited version is called author accepted manuscript. Now, who has the copyright for this? And it's not published, conventionally published version, but it's another document, another version of the document created. And now publishers claim to have control on that. Fine, they have invested some, their set of row using peer reviewers, but peer reviewers are not their employees, but editors are their employees. So it is copyrighted to the extent that author, the publishers claim it. And then, but this is an issue that is not much debated. And then the archive, the published version comes out. So you have a preprint version or ePrint, and then AAM, author accepted manuscript version, which is popularly known as, which is quite known as AM, like Aam Aadmi Party, I guess. Now, when you move to archived version, archiving published version, when you talk about now the gold OA, yes, authors, you can archive it. That is the character of gold. Author retains the copyright in the gold version, and publisher is required to declare OA license under CC BY, which you are all aware of it, because APC is paid, author article processing charges are paid. Effectively, in this case, the publisher is working as a contractor of an author, although publisher publishes the article and he doesn't really own the copyright, unless he doesn't charge a fee for the gold OA. Now, it's the same with hybrid OA also. The journal is published in hybrid OA, all of you know. It has both publisher-owned content, that is publisher copyrighted content, and completely free content where only author has got all the copyright, which is made open to the world by open license of CC BY CCC. Now, so then the embargoed OA. The embargoed OA is one thing where the copyright still rests with the publisher. This will require permission for archiving. So in effect, what can go to archive is gold OA, hybrid OA, and pre-published AAM version, which also requires publisher's permission. And then of course, the preprints, the first version, copyrighted version of author does not require any any permission from the publisher. Now, one important thing is in the copyright area, suddenly only this has been raised as a serious issue where authors have realized and institutions have realized that authors are unnecessarily signing away, surrendering the copyright. Recent MIT elsewhere deal fallout is a classic example, but this is something scientific community should have thought about long ago. In fact, in one of the lectures at Raman Institute, when institutional repository which we developed for Indian Academy of Science was inaugurated, I told the same thing to the community of scientists, that it's the authors who should not surrender and retain the copyright. And there is nothing wrong even if they can publish in more than one place. Once they have, once they decide not to give copyright. Now that practice is emerging, that is a highly beneficial development of open access. And when copyright assignment, when copyright is retained by the publisher, publishing becomes a publishing service. Right now, journal publishing by publisher is more like a product. Every journal is a product which they own. But with open access, that will change. Publishing will become more like a publishing service, like a software service. We know about software service, which is a big industry in the world. There is a software product. Microsoft is a software product company. TCS, which is a $15 billion or more company, is a software services company. So publishers can continue to pursue the business more as a service business through a different business model than a product business. There's also a possibility, going back to what Gandhi did. What Gandhi did 100 years ago, maybe the governments can think of making only the scholar articles copyright free. But the governments may not know, there could be certain other implications. Now, I will briefly touch upon next on the OA types. You're all familiar anyway. I don't have to talk much about this, except a few important elements from my perspective. You know, when I'm talking about OA types, when I'm talking here, please remember that OA types is more about the articles than journals. The OA, when we talk about OA journal, only gold refers to OA journal, which may also transform in a different way in the coming years. So green is not a journal at all. There's nothing like a green journal. In fact, green is what we call a parasite of traditional publishing model, because it is what is going to be published is going to be archived. And one important thing I would like to mention here is the green gets into IR, which is driven by librarians now. One of the problems of green in terms of access is lots of repositories today, do not take DOI for preprints. Today, you can also take DOI for preprint version and even for AAM version, author accepted manuscript versions, whichever is available, which makes it a lot easier for people to access. While you put in a reprint, it is also harvested by a lot of harvesting agents like base and whatnot. Often it becomes difficult, particularly when an aggregator, like, when someone like JGate or Web of Science puts it in, tries to connect. We have to match with what we already have. We have already a metadata for journal articles, and then we have to dedupe it. The deduping becomes a big process. Linking becomes a big process. It will be important if green, IRs also think of getting DOI for whatever they archive as author's manuscripts. And the question I have is, of green, let us look at it later. You are all familiar with gold, hybrid, bronze, and whatnot. I will go along talking about it as we further continue, because this is something we keep touching on that every now and then. Now, what is important here is, the bronze and immediate and delayed. The bronze immediate, of course, is there are a lot of journals where they include articles where it's immediately available. In fact, many publishers publish the whole journal within a subscription journal, publish articles, sometimes editorial or non-peer reviewed, and even peer reviewed. They make it available free, but they don't charge a fee for that. And the delayed bronze is something where the traditional publishers started making it available after 6 months or 1 year or 2 years. This has been achieved primarily because of the impact of open access movement. The governments interfered and issued a directive that wherever the government has funded substantially the research, that should be made available at least within 6 months to 1 year and things like that. And now publishers themselves have started making available after 2 years, 3 years, and things like that. If you look at it, publishers in the print world never bothered about a journal after first year or second year is over. It's only in the electronic world they are feeling the ownership of the content. Earlier, they never even bothered about that ownership at all, because now internet created a new opportunity for distribution and economics of it and whatever else. Is nothing but a glory OA where authors publish a journal, open access journal, but they don't charge a fee. Let us look at OA growth and demographics to understand where OA stands today and where OA is heading. Let us look at growth both from the numbers in terms of our journals and articles, and also more in terms of the usage. Now, can you look at this? There were 2 articles published in August 2013 and August 2017, and one was what I would call, half of 2011 papers now free to read. This was published in Nature. The other one was also published in Nature in 2017, 4 years later. Half of papers searched for online or free to read. Now, if it was half in 2013, why would it be half even in 2017? Now, why I'm telling this to you about, bringing this to your attention is, the open access, since it is a new movement that started 20 years ago, even till date, not much of data is organized. Only of late it is getting organized. A lot of data is available. Still, we still don't have complete and accurate data about how many embedded journals are there, how many journals supporting green are there, and things like that. And maybe because of that, also the samples used were much smaller in those days. And now the surveys use much larger samples, and we are able to get better understanding of where we stand today. You know, that is important to plan ahead to where to develop new models. Now, this was a 2017 survey, which I'm presenting to you here, which is done by Heather POR, who is, you must be knowing Unpaywall. He is one of the co-founders of Unpaywall. The first one indicates the number of articles. As you see here again, let me take this down. Okay. As you see here, the number of green papers is 4.8%. You know, as of 2030. So green, in fact, the OS started with green, but green is still having a relatively very low percentage of content for open access. Whereas interestingly, the bronze, what you call, you know, the what we call delayed OA, embargoed OA, has more than 16%. That's amazing. Now, coming down further, you see the gold is only 3.2%. Now, which means it hasn't still caught up well. Hybrid is 3.6, trying to take over. 72%, of course, is closed. Then you look at the usage. That is very interesting. In terms of usage, 9% of the article used is green. So although green accounts for a lower volume of content in the whole system, it accounts for a higher usage, largely because a lot of time preprints are added, you know, even well before the article is published. I see that in this COVID period today, a lot of preprints are getting into newspaper as an excitement of new discoveries. Now, of course, the bronze, about 15%, gold is about 14%. Now you can just see how the usage pattern is different for different type. In fact, the gold is very high, although the gold-based articles, the total content volume is 3.2%, the usage volume is 14%. It is very high. Now, let us see where it stands in the now in the last 2 years and where it is going ahead. Now, one of the important things here is, you know, this is almost the OA movement and the number of articles getting into the system for open access, since there was no open access in the past, it's almost like growing and like a kind of a moving post all the time. Now, I'm showing you something here. It comes from our product JGate. We claim to have the world's largest journal collection in our database. More than 50,000, about 48,000 are active journals, peer-reviewed journals. Now, what I wanted to show you in this is, of course, we cover only English language content, and we are not at this point of time covering preprints. So there are some limitations. Now, as you see here, 2018 data, if you see 42%, and it comes down to 41, 37, and almost comes down to 19, 20% as you go down further and further down. When I see going down further and further, when you go to last century, it comes to almost 16, 17%. That means a lot of back content is still not available for open access. That's something very interesting and an area that needs to be addressed. That's largely because the publishers have still locked them up, the back content, although they never intended to do it in their early past. Now, I also have, okay, here showing from another source called Dimensions, who cover all languages and things like that, which we don't cover all languages, I said, and also preprints and whatnot. The pattern is same. I just wanted to make sure and that this pattern, that back years content is not still well covered, and publishers are still locked up a lot of content, and the embargo period, that what they call bronze or the embargo, is limited to the last 10 to 12 years. Now let us look at the usage modeling. Now I'm going by a model which again the same gentleman developed, usage modeling using a very large scale data and this big data and analytics. Sorry, there's a spelling error. Using big data analytics techniques, and also based on full text page view analysis, using a technology they have which unpay all users. And the earlier studies were all depending on samples like 20,000 samples and 100,000 samples. Here the samples used are very large, and the techniques used are very different in the sense they used more than 2 lakhs users were tracked in terms of the usage of different type of all types of open access articles, including closed, at the download level, page view level, the full text view level. And this one, this was tracked and analyzed extensively, and they go by the analysis is made. The definition of view is number of articles multiplied by views per article is what they have used. And they call these two as signals, and they use some signal processing logarithmic model for this survey. And let us look at what this survey really tells us on the usage side currently. One important thing in this survey is, they have taken not the date of publication, but the date of what they call observation. In the sense, a lot of articles of the back years keep coming to open access slowly. And not everything is immediate OA. A large part, as you saw now earlier, almost 70% of the articles are still in the behind the paywall. They are all coming. So in effect, when they come in, an article, which year it comes into open access domain, is considered as the observation year. Based on that, this whole research was done, the survey was done. Just take a look at this article view per year by age and OA type. A little bit of quick analysis. As you see here, pardon?
Oh, sorry. I muted my, sorry.
See, if you see here, obviously, what I'm showing here, the closed access content, the closed access content, which is green, not green, down below, graphs are closed. On top, you can see in a gray shade. That has a great usage, early period. As you go by age, it reduces in all cases, but it naturally, because the first year and the first 2 years used. Obviously, green has very little in the first 2 years, and you see very little. And gold also has fairly a good amount of usage. The content itself is very small. Since the total volume of content is very large in closed, you see a big usage graph here and in the vertex. Whereas the immediate bronze and bronze, they also have a slight usage. Delayed bronze, if you look at it, not so much. Okay, so maybe because of that, publishers are making it available after delay of 3 to 4 years, after 4 years. Yeah, now let us look. This is article view per year by age and OA type. Now this is views per year. Let us look at views per article. This views per year goes by the number of articles seen by a lot of people. Number of articles are very large, number of users are very large. So you will not be able to get a distinct understanding of the usage by articles, by each type. Now, if you look at views per article, suddenly the whole thing changes. The green MOA shows a very big usage. The view per article download in green is very significant, as you also saw in the earlier statistics. Now, it is not so much with the closed MOA. In effect, green MOA, for with all the good reasons Steve have not thought about, has a tremendous scope for exploiting further. Although in between, authors are not showing great interest in that. What I would call authors' inertia is really affecting this. And you see the usage in different way, and I have given the article which you can go through. It's a very interesting article for those who really want to understand the dynamics of growth of OA, particularly in terms of usage and usage analysis. And of course, the hybrid also has a reasonably good usage. Now, let me move to, now based on this, they extrapolated based on this data, the previous data, which was done for 15 years, more than 15, they did it from 1950 to current, with 2 lakhs users and almost resulting in 3 million per month downloads. For 1 year, they did this survey, research. We effectively more than 35 million articles. After this, they extrapolated the growth without taking into account any other external factors, developments like planners and all that. With that, because there are a lot of new drivers emerging, none of the new drivers were taken into consideration. It was a logarithmic extrapolation. If you look at it, in 2024, this is a view from 2025. Now, when you are seeing this graph, what it means is what will be the status in 2025 when you look back. And you see there's a significant increase in green OA. And there is a shrinking in the closed OA compared to the earlier one. I didn't show you a similar graph like that from the previous survey. I will show you the data which gives you a much clearer idea. Now, you take a minute and look at closely this particular data. How, and remember that this view you are getting when you are in 2025. It's not exactly like, for example, green OA in 2010 will be 7%. It's not going to be 7% in 2010, but it's going to be certainly 2010 added OA. The green content will be 7% in 2025. That's what it means. And if you look at it, green goes to 19%. And what is very interesting here is, if you take now the OA all types, it jumps to 71%. Today it is around, in terms of usage, today it is around 52%. It jumps to 72%. And closed OA, which still dominates today in terms of usage count, that will shrink to 28%. This with no changes if the OA is left to continue to grow in the same way as it is growing also. That's what the assumption is. And if any change, I presume, is going to be increasing the further acceleration of OA. Now, in terms of a quick analysis, you also see that the bronze OA, that is what you call delayed OA or embargoed OA, that will continue to lose its impact. And even the hybrid OA, and that hybrid OA will not be encouraged any longer from whatever period they have put. And gold OA may, is going to get strengthened. Today, gold OA is much smaller in terms of usage, which will be overtaking the closed OA. So in effect, while green OA is important, the another observation I would like to make here is, I mentioned green is a parasite of current subscription model. If you add 28% and 19%, 37%. That means that is the contribution. That is the contribution of the traditional publishing model. So by 2025, while green OA is more on the open access side, the role of publishers will be, current traditional model publishers is going to be quite a bit marginalized. And but still, we can't say that the OA drivers, particularly the gold OA and all other models, hybrid OA, which is going to change now, are able to drive enough to realize the goal of what is called universal open access to happen immediately, because planners wants it to happen immediately. Okay, now let us move with this idea of understanding of there is a big increase in usage. Usage is certainly accelerating day by day. And now an initiative which has so much of strong advocacy in the world, and with nearly 2 decades of advocacy, where the scientists have got together very well. Why hasn't it found a business model so far? This is a question that puzzles me. Now, could be the reason, some reason is here. Now, just read this. It is said that the journal publishing industry is perceived to be today a kind of a looters of scientific community's money. It is an industry like no other, with profit margins to rival Google. And it was created by, you must be knowing, Robert Maxwell, who was the founder of Pergamon Press, who subsequently sold his company to Elsewhere. At that time, Elsewhere was a very, very small company. In effect, the legacy we have inherited is because of the Robert Maxwell's and his publishing enterprise merged into Elsewhere. And Elsewhere's profit margin is something that has become an eyesore for the entire scientific community. Now, yes, it is, these percentages are misleading often and misreading. It doesn't mean that they are making more money than Apples and Googles. Imagine Apple, Google, and Amazon, all the three, each one of them is more than $100 billion companies. Whereas Elsewhere's journal business is just about $3 billion, maybe a little more or less. Now, obviously, a $3 billion company can't make more profits than Apples and Googles. What it means, 36% is 36% of the revenue as a gross profit they make. It's almost like me telling the restaurant opposite to me, a small restaurant makes 120% profit. I don't even make 5% profit. Will it make sense? But this is the kind of thinking and statement. Interestingly, this was published in Guardian, a very famous UK journal. This kind of a perception has really created a big gap and almost a kind of a war. And still, it has got along well, I must say. Now, this perception needs to change because there is a lot of emotional overplay in the whole advocacy in this movement. Now it is high time the OA movement goes in a rational, logical direction, completely devoid of the earlier emotions. And all that is central to why the hell they are making so much profits. Now, you just look at it in pure funding terms, in the pure figures, the global research spending is $2 trillion. Global scholarly journal spending is 10 billion. It's not US dollar 2 trillion. So in effect, global research spending is $2 trillion. That is $2,000 billion. And global scholarly journal spending is spent by all libraries. Remember, it also includes corporate sector. We don't know how much they spend. Is about 10 billion, which accounts for 0.5%. Is it a big deal in the whole spending? This is what we need to realize when we think of open access. But open access is important for a very, very different reason, which need to be pursued. Now, let us look at OA publishing business model in this background. When we talk about gold versus, gold has been the only model so far, which is almost trying to overtake traditional subscription model. So far, the scientific community has felt fairly comfortable with gold, except the hybrid gold, because there the charges are very, very high. The gold based, the APC charges based journals are charging all gold, all complete OA. They are charging anywhere between $500 to $2,000. If you take PLOS as a classic example, they charge about $2,000, I believe. Interestingly, I must tell you, a conference I attended long ago in Sweden, not Ghent universities, in Sweden, one of the universities. It was an open access conference. PLOS director at that time mentioned that they charge $1,500, but their cost is $2,000 per article. In the same meeting, Springer said they are going to charge $3,000 per article, and that helps them make good enough money. Now, this cost, is something very tricky, cost and price. I always say this, cost is real, but price is unreal. What you pay for a journal is price, not the cost, but cost is real. and there is very little way the users will ever get to know the cost, the price, the cost. So the costs are very different. Every service has a cost. Okay, coming back, the gold today commands 53%. When I go back, I showed that in the previous slide, in the usage analysis, in terms of usage, and subscription model by 2025 will be commanding 47%, which includes green, because that is part of subscription. Now, since the gold is really not driving the open access movement as intended, as it was intended to, scientists are thinking, the community is thinking of different plans, largely within their purview of, largely within their perception. Now, the plan has evolved, which is a model that I will discuss. I called it an impatient interventionist model. What I mean impatient interventionist model is, it is largely, the goal is very clear. We have to achieve that. That is immediate universal open access, immediate universal open access. For that, if we have to do that, we have to intervene. And we had to do something. That's very good. But the interventionist models have their own disadvantages also. We'll look at it as we go along. There is another model, repurposing the library budget, which is proposed by Max Planck Institute, something the librarians would love to know about it. And I would look at a more open model also, which can happen even from the library side, break the journal. The idea of breaking the journal is the user wants an article, not the journal. The journal is for the author, for the publisher, as a medium of publishing and curation. But for the user, it doesn't matter. So let us start looking, if you start looking at a whole new business model from the user perspective only, then things will change. Why not break the journal into something else? So these are the four models I thought out of which largely we are going to briefly discuss about planners. And I hope somebody, Francis or someone, can remind me about the time. Now the planners is quite a bit in the talk. It was announced in 2008 by a group of European funding agencies, also supported by 4 major international private funding agencies like Bill Gates Foundation, etc. And they initially thought that with effect from, they declared their mission that with effect from 2021, the entire scholarly publication should move to open access. So they thought that 3 years is good enough, but it hasn't still taken off. The thinking is it may be 2024 now. Now, the whole idea is it's created by funding agencies, and funding agencies are thinking, anyway, we are funding the research. Why not fund the journals also, publishing of journals also at the article level, basically flipping. The flipping has already happened. That means shift the budget for the, to publishing, publishing the journal, for the author, what they call APC, or article processing charges. Now, as I said, it's a 2018 plan started, and there's a 10-point charter as a policy. You can look at on their website. I will not spend much time. It focuses on all issues that what we consider important. Particularly, it focuses on copyright issues, making it very clear. In fact, that is the first point actually, retain copyright. Then looks at the quality criteria of not just the journals, also the databases and platforms for delivery and the technology, the whole infrastructure, and incentivizing the infrastructure for improving the quality criteria. Now it also says that the APC to be covered by funders or research. They are not very, whether they only are going to fund everything or institutions have to manage partly. It's not very clear. So and what is something important, particularly for the libraries, is they consider explicitly library as a key stakeholders. And for years, like for librarians who have been very strongly advocating, it has been more a pain without gain. Now, for the first time, a major initiative explicitly recognizes librarians, which include the stakeholders. When they mention it is librarians and institutions, scientific community, and all that they say. So now, they also have compliance issue. They have made it very clear that only those, they have kept it open that both the gold model and the traditional sub-publishing model can continue, and there'll be no hybrid model. Agree for immediate OA, which means the traditional publishing model will have to let author accepted manuscript available immediately in the green OA. In effect, green OA will get a new life. But the question is, will the authors really archive the question? And that requires an entirely different model. In fact, in one of the conferences I attended, one gentleman, John Doe, a good friend of mine with a very strong open access advocate, he came out with a model where to encourage green OA, the whole putting the author accepted manuscript into a national repository, which is currently done by the libraries and the authors through the library, should be done by the publishers themselves. A new idea. Anyway, publisher has got the version, why not he upload it? And innovation like that can happen. Certainly, Planus model could be driving, it will be further driving the green model. So there are several things like that. And yeah. Now, also, yeah.
Okay. Sure. Okay, right.
Oh gosh, it gets stuck. Yeah. Okay, now the question is plan viable? Is Planus viable global business model? There are a lot of doubts and thinking, a lot of discussion going on. You can follow that. In my own perception, it's certainly going to redefine author-publisher relationship. As I already said, publishers will have to redefine themselves to become a publishing service organization. And one major issue is the fear of hurting the academic freedom of scholars. See, the authors' academic freedom is something very important for the community of faculty and researchers, which is a great benefit for them as to be free thinkers. The moment the funding agencies come in, the control becomes of a different type. I compare it in a way, when a company goes to VC funding, although they give a little bit money, they will be having a total control, but not the bankers. If the banks invest, they will not controlling you. If they become like control starts, then it may break the feelings of authors. There's a transformative agreement as a strategy to push publishers plan. These transformative agreements are very interesting, which is extensively managed in Europe by Max Planck Institute. It is all about creating a new kind of an agreement. You all know about the double dip, where today when in a hybrid journal, you are paying for subscription as well as paying for APC. You are paying for publishing, you are paying for reading. So now that has to go. Now the consortia particularly have started demanding that if their institute or a group of institutes in the consortia are paying spending X amount of money on the publishers' journals as APC charges, that will have to be set off against the subscription they are demanding. Now, that is one of the reasons why the University of I think which one the University of San Francisco, that fell out last year. That happened. University of California, not University of California. Okay. Now, the other important thing is this planners funded authors is only 3.3, account for only 3.3% of papers. What about the rest of the 97% papers? There's still no clarity here. Nobody knows exactly. This is an estimate by Rick Anderson. Nobody knows how much of funding, how much of a research, currently for what you call gold articles, how much of money is paid by funding agencies. Giving research grant and paying separately, exclusively for APC are two different things. Now, of course, US has refused to join, and China is silent. India, we still don't know. First we said yes, then we said we don't. I mean, we are still. Then we said we are still thinking. Then there is also something interesting going on among the publishers itself. The professional society publishers are not happy with the green model. Sorry, we're happy with the Planus model. The commercial publishers are okay with the Planus model. In fact, the recent survey by, I forget the name, about 24 publishers vehemently said that some of them having a gold OA, they said that if Planus comes, they will switch over to green model. They're happy to make available the author accepted manuscript for open access immediately, since that is also allowed. The final one is still not very clear, and there is no cap. Earlier they had a cap on what should be the article processing charges to be paid. Unfortunately, the cap is removed now. Now, the one biggest concern is it likely to create a geographical barrier? The APC charge-based, gold-based open access, particularly for publishing globally in international, it's a different game for Americans and Europeans, and it's an entirely different game for Indians. Look at that. The kind of a new, what they call geo walls it may end up creating, how is it going to be addressed? And how are the developing countries going to address this challenge? Because the funding agencies are all European in nature. Now, this affordability, I just made a, from the India perspective, what is it likely to be? Today, this data is based on our JGate. When we talk about publishing, Indian publishing has two components. Indian journal, what I mean Indian publishing, scholarly publishing by Indian scientists, Indian scholarly community. It has two components. What is published in international journals? What is published in Indian journals? Now, that number used to be very small earlier. It has picked up. Now, if you look at 2018 as the date, the year, if you look at global journals, what Indian scientists published in 2018, 67,000 articles in global journals. And that must be at a cost of $2,500 average. I'm making an assumption here. I don't have any data. I tried to get some data. And there is a report recently brought out by it's a joint report. But that also could not give me any data, although they addressed this issue. So if I assume $1,500 as something fair or something without which you can't publish in international journal, it could be about 529 crore. Now this is an area, it requires study now all across the country, how much how many institutions are really spending money on APC, publishing in international journals, etc. Now, if you take the Indian, I have taken 25% of that rounded off. Indian scientific community publishes in Indian journals about 1.8 lakhs articles. 180,000 plus articles were published in 2018. If you take that, it comes to about 566 crore at the rate of 30,000 per article. Then it comes to almost about 1,095 crores. India is currently spending on subscribing to journals, largely international journals, because Indian journals, I don't think less than 50 crores, you can virtually get every journal. So spending anywhere between 800 to 1,000 crores. Even this data we don't have with any accuracy. This is my estimate based on my past business knowledge and experience. It is a reasonable estimate, I would say. It's in this range. So in effect, it's almost like you are already spending that money and you are going to spend the same money. The only advantage, of course, is, let us not forget, that all the articles published by Indian scientists will become open access. When I say all the articles again, that about 67,000 out of which about 50, that will become open access. When it comes to Indian journals, 1,88,000 articles published in Indian journals, that is of no consequence because the money you pay for those journals is a pittance. Even if you pay and buy, it is no big deal. So the real big deal here is 529 crore. I think imagine the cost, the total Indian subscription budget for all the Indian journals put together, I would imagine is not more than 50 crore. All the library is spending now. And now if you completely turn that table to APC model, you will be spending 500 crore more. So obviously it requires a careful thought. Okay, now the second model, as an offshoot of what I just now said, is a repurposing the library budget. Now libraries are already spending, and they have been spending for years. They are managing the library budget, they are managing the whole subscription, journal subscription, not just from this money to publishers, but in terms of managing access. And the libraries have a deep knowledge of the entire publishing costs and publishing process and mechanism, if not deep, have a fairly broad understanding. They are in the domain, I would say, between an author and a scientist and the librarian. The librarian is closer to publishing domain, although author is a partner of a publisher. That's very interesting. Author knows very little about publishing unless he is the editor of a journal. Not all authors are editors, very small, maybe 0.1% of the authors become editors. So in effect, here is a group which has which is a strong has a strong advocacy, drive in the last 20 years, ever since the movement began. Why are they not considered? The Max Planck Institute, this is a model thought by Max Planck Institute librarian. His article, sorry, I'm not cited here. I can put that article, which this data is not from that article anyway. It's near, I have used some data like the average cost, etc. So now this repurposing, when you, in the same situation, currently you are spending $10 billion, even at a high cost, you are going to spend about $7 to $8 billion. You're still going to save some money. You have achieved the goal. So what roles libraries can play? There must be a debate on, in this direction, whether the funding agencies fund or whoever funds at the end of the day, the only thing the institution is spending. The only thing is funded research is not giving money to libraries today. Institution is giving money today. that model is still not there. It's more an administrative issue within the organizations. So now coming to the model I was talking about, break the journal model. Users, as I said earlier itself, are interested more in the articles than journals. Where maybe authors are interested in protecting because of ranking and reputation issues and all that. But anyway, that is going to go away because the Planis model and the DORA model of the declaration of research assessment proposal by IISc that are very clear that the citation model should not be the factor to promote journals and publishing. They should be used elsewhere. And the usage data is very encouraging to green and IR model. Now, keeping this in mind and a lot of other thinking, I thought that it's high time you break the journal. And there are a lot of thinking going on in this direction, and some people are already talking about it. The whole idea I have outlined here is, imagine a platform, an independent, neutral platform who is not going to be a publisher, because in any neutrality will require that it is not going to be a publishing organization. Publishing will be done by publishing service organization or publishers, what we have. That neutrality is very, very important. So someone comes up with a platform. Now, authors submit a manuscript to IR supported by the institutions managed by librarians. So these IRs can have an additional responsibility of managing the publishing process, institutional publishing process within their organization. So manuscript is edited before it is sent out. So which means there will be an editorial group within every institution, which will be, it's almost like a replacement of what a traditional publisher does. And after editing and some internal review, it is hosted on the platform. So the platform interacts with IR for feed and broadcast. Typically, like you think of Uber kind of a platform. Now, now the libraries are going to drive this from their side, this model. In effect, they all become like drivers for this, for this platform. Now, once it goes into platform, you go for an open peer review. It's a public peer review. It is an entirely different from, this is being thought about, but not tried very aggressively. Which means it's not tried because it is going to kill the current peer review model, which has existed for the last several years, maybe centuries. So the current peer review model is part of the traditional publishing model. The question I would like to ask is, journal publishing model, why do you want to keep the old peer review model also intact? Can't you reinvent the peer review model itself? So here, move to the public. Let there be a public peer review, and based on it, you can have in the back end a neutral ranking system, rating system, based on which authors can pick up the articles. They can publish it. And in effect, publishing becomes a smaller enterprise, but a richer enterprise in terms of the content, value, and volume. What the more important content will get curated, less important content will remain in the platform as a repository. That is the whole idea. And this is the assumption. Maybe these kind of things need to be debated. Now, quickly to Indian story. I'm sorry, it's already, should I stop it here?
You can quickly finish it, sir.
Okay. Let me, the Indian story is also important. Where did the Indian story start? In my perspective, it started, we are all concerned about particularly the predatory journals where there are a lot of discussions going on, confusion. There is more confusion than rational discussion there also. So the Indian story really started here. Just see this data, somewhere the whole drive, what I would call the number game of Indian science to to match up against the challenges of China. China threw the challenges that their papers are growing. There was a time when we had about 30,000 papers. They used to be below 30,000. And everything has changed. Today, they publish more papers, tons of papers, so much so that they are likely to overtake US also. Now we were left far, far behind. That is when, during the middle of last decade, there was a lot of thinking among the, in the scientific leadership at the DST level and the CSIR level and all that, to drive the policy. One of the interesting findings was that the number of scientists in India who are also the publishing authors in India is very small compared to our population. At that time, India had less than, around 1 lakh plus scientists. I don't know now. And a country like US had more than 15 times more. Now, yeah, it's natural, the number game becomes important. In effect, science was for chosen few, research was for chosen few. That had to break. So the policy was started with a good intention to drive the PhDs. And that is where all the problems started. And today we have close to 200,000, I don't know how much in current year. Last year, 170,000 students registered for PhD, enrolled for PhD.
Sir, people are asking for some feedback links, sir. Does it matter? Huh? Okay, fine.
As a 500,000, so today I guess more than 500,000 people are doing research in India as PhD students.
Oh, sure.
Every student will publish at least one article, which means 5 lakhs articles. Right now, total number of articles published by all Indian community put together is about 3 lakhs articles. Now, this will be jumping to 5 lakhs plus 6 lakhs and whatnot. Like our population, it will be jumping. Now, where is the infrastructure? The problem was the Indian scientific community, Indian research community never focused on building the scholarly publishing infrastructure for too very long. And none of the academies have done any great job in that. Now it has become a kind of a cocoon system. Now, how do you break out of that? If you continue, unless you involve the entire community of not just the, all stakeholders, including the publishers. So I don't think things will change quickly. And the reason why we ended up, a kind of a overnight explosion of journals, call it predatory or whatever, was primarily because of this reason. And it's all because we did not build the infrastructure. Even now, we are nowhere in that direction aggressively and actively. So this data comes from All India Survey of Higher Education. Now, yeah, this is the same data that, you see here in the curve. The number of articles published in Indian journals took a big jump after 2009. That coincides with the acceleration in the PhD enrollment. Until then, the number of articles published in Indian journals and international journals was almost same. It was slightly less than what was published abroad. This is just in numbers, data. So again, this is picked up from a date. This again for your understanding purpose in the scholarly journals. India is certainly contributing, even if you take overall as a share of the global scholarly journal market in terms of journals and articles. Our share is fairly significant. 10% of journal share and 13% of OA share in terms of global share. And within the country, 70% of the journals published by India is open access. I said open access is of no consequence for India anyway. And in terms of papers, is also significant. About 10% of the articles are in OA journals, 4.7% all put together total. So 4.7% is very, very small, I would say, considering the size of the country. And with 500,000 PhDs, even if 200,000 really come out in the next 2 years, imagine will the quality improve? This 4.7% is a reflection of quality also, I guess. I would not comment on that right away, but will this really improve? So moving the India story, the figures tell you a lot more than what I can speak. And the consortium models gave near OA benefit in India. Thanks to the consortia, a few consortia, although consortia development also is quite a bit haphazard in India. A small consortia with are happening. But with the service the consortia model has done is remarkable. It's a near OA benefit to India. More than 60% of the articles for those who have access to consortia journals, they have more than 60% open access, or even 70%. This is another study one needs to do. And national license is being talked about. In fact, there is a what you call the new education policy has come out with a thinking that there must be one single point of purchase for the whole country for all scholarly, international scholarly journals, which means there will be only one single consortia, like a national consortium. Again, the pros and cons of this will have to be debated. It's almost like saying one nation, one subscription. In fact, that one nation, one subscription idea is debated in the joint report of the 3 academies. The debate is, I would say, is not, not very deep in nature. It requires a far more detailed debate. The other thing is Indian journals are too low priced and have become a target of international publishers. A classic example I have myself found is one fine day, we discovered that a journal which was costing 2,000 rupees suddenly became 650 pounds, which was because it was acquired by an international publisher based out of UK. Now, how can this happen? Now, this is again, who do you blame? The society, whoever was publishing was lured. Okay, we are going to give you good royalty. Okay, my revenue was only 2,000 rupees earlier per journal. Now I'm going to get at least 40% or whatever of 600 pounds or whatever they were charging. It was a big jump. I don't remember exactly 600 pounds. Now, so it is a way of Indian journals getting internationalized. Do we want this model? We should debate. Then predatory journals is being debated. What we really need to do, understand and address this issue is, now, let not authors become the victims. The predatory journals started largely because, it was almost like we allowed the market to happen this way. And it's all supply demand factor. The supply demand, the market is always driven by supply demand. So this was particularly demand driven. It's bad, very bad. But we need to see that authors should not be victimized. And I'm sure there must be a lot of, quite a few good articles and good authors in that. So it requires a more matured thinking and cleaning process. And of course, planners, I've already discussed whether India can afford. I've already put this data to you. So in conclusion, I fully agree and endorse and strongly advocate that OA is the ideal model for scholarly communication. I have myself experienced it. You'd be surprised. I was looking at, there was an article which discussed what you call a disruptive model for journals. I had long downloaded from Wiley. Now the trouble with Wiley is even if it is an open access article, you can't download too often. And if you have downloaded and saved it, after 1 month you open it, you can't use it. It dies out. You'll have to go back. And I've done this half a dozen times, I still got it. This time, 2 days ago when I was trying to look at it, since I had not saved, I had saved that article, but it was not in my laptop. It was in my desktop in the office, which I don't use anymore. Now, which means I have lost this article. I logged in to get this article. Yeah, no, because it was not working, you know, it doesn't open up. Now, what happens, it is asking me to pay money. Now, so what I'm trying to say is open access as a universal philosophy for scholarly journal, scholarly public communication is very, very important and imperative, and it's needed much. Okay. I will not focus more, take any more time. I would still say that nothing wrong in commercial publishing as long as copyright is not surrendered to publishers exclusively. And profits are required for sustainable growth of any enterprise, whether it is for profit or non-profit. In fact, I am of the view that the word profit is a misnomer in the sense, if you understand the real meaning of profit, there is no not-for-profit organization at all in the world. It is a sustainable surplus one generates anyway. Important, libraries can play a lead and creative role, which I have already discussed. And it's also time to break the journal. So I strongly believe that universal OA is feasible. I first put it as a question. I removed the question mark, but it has a cost which needs to be recognized. Please understand the cost and don't get lost in profits. Thank you very much. And I once again thank NCSINet, and more so thank you for all those who patiently waited and listened. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So, Professor Arunachalam, your remarks, please.
Satya had covered a very, very wide range of points. There cannot be a more comprehensive coverage of open access around the world, open access around publishing, open access in India, and so on. I particularly liked his comments on the different approaches to open access, such as planners and the libraries repurposing the budget, etc. Some of these things we should try in India before we move on to other things. I want to add something many of you might not have known, right now, the government of India is in the process of building a new science, technology, and innovation policy. And as one aspect of the policy, they are looking at scholarly communication, open access, open science, APC, consortium model, etc. And some of our good friends are in a committee which looks at this issue. And they would have benefited if they had listened to this talk by Satya. Of course, they're all very knowledgeable people, and they have gathered much information from various sources, and they have also discussed with a large number of people who are not already in the committee. And they will soon release their draft recommendations, and which after a panel looks into it, will be released for public comments. I would like all of you who attended, about 450 or 480 people attended this lecture by Satya. I would like all of you to have a look at the recommendations and give your comments to the committees. And I want to also congratulate Satya for one thing, his energy. He is, I'm sure he's close to 60, or at least definitely past 50. And he has been tirelessly working on his chosen mission of building libraries, of bringing information to India, from helping Indian librarians and scientists and scholars get access to journals and services, databases, and so on. And also building. And today, it was like a crowning jewel for all his efforts. He really kept the audience spellbound with a lot of information and plenty of data. I want you to realize many people think Satya is a businessman. I won't agree. He's more a scholar, more a researcher. And a businessman is just an addendum. You would have known by yourself today from this talk how much he has put in effort to gather data and present cogently his arguments. I want Satya to live long, continue his mission, and guide India and Indian citizens and Indian scientists and scholars and librarians. And I also want to thank Francis and the NCSA Foundation for organizing this. Thank you all who listened to this wonderful talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. I also take this opportunity to thank Mr. Satya for delivering an excellent talk, and to Professor Subbiah Arunachalam for the wonderful manner in which he chaired the session. I now request Dr. Babu to conduct the question and answer session, please. Over to Dr. Babu.
Thank you, sir. Indeed, I also agree with Dr. Subbiah Arunachalam, popularly known as Arun, who has said that Satya is not a businessman, he is a scholar, in fact. I totally agree with you, because he is one of the top list professionals in India who keeps updates on the subject and business. So it's always wonderful to listen to him. So with that, there are many questions, around 45 questions have come, but in the interest of time, we have selected few. And one question coming from Mohan HR, he's from Hindu, Chennai. His question, am I audible, sir? Satya, sir?
Yeah,
okay.
you are. Yeah, hi Babu, you are audible. Thank you.
Yes, so his question is, can Sci-Hub considered, as a supporting OA movement? That's one part of his question. Second question is there any initiative like PLOS in India?
No, the first part of the question, no. And the second part of the question, PLOS kind, there is no independent PLOS kind of publishing activity in India. Maybe we don't have, because PLOS was founded by a philanthropist who gave initially $9 million. And largely Indian publishing activity is happening by government funding or professional societies. I'm not aware of any PLOS kind of a philanthropic funded model.
Maybe a low battery.
Pardon?
Moving on to the next question by Sumati Srikaneshan from Mumbai. She says, what would be first 3 to 5 steps Indian academia need to know for going in for fully open access?
Can you repeat it? I didn't hear.
She says, what would be, first 3 to 5 steps for Indian academia, for them to follow to be fully open access?
Yeah, I think in the current situation, the first thing that need to be followed is well before you upload your article to ResearchGate or academia.edu, think of your institutional IR and deposit. If not your institutional IR, if you don't have one, there are discipline specific IR. CSIR has one, DBT has one shared with I think DST. So there are quite a few good IRs in India, national level IRs emerging. So sitting in their local IR, that's one thing. Then there are several things I can think of. And in terms of, I think the institution should also encourage, local publishing, local quality publishing. The scientific community should think of publishing in Indian journals, people who have been publishing in international journals who are highly cited. Highly cited scientists of India should consider publishing at least every year one article in an Indian journal. So these are the two things I can immediately tell you. And maybe I will respond to you separately again since there is time. I don't want to take too much of time.
There is so two more interesting questions. Probably we need quick answers by you. One is by Professor Asundi, who is the presently Kala president, says that there are many initiatives and organizations like OCLC who are creating consortia model for sharing back numbers or articles under OA. Your views on that?
Yeah, the back numbers of articles is a very interesting question. I see. I did not mention about this. I mentioned about a gap, a lot of back years content is not covered in the open access repositories, largely because publishers have kept the what they think the rights, but they really do not have rights. And what I mean to say here is there was a case called Tosini case, Authors Union case, which was a case on the rights given for a collected work and independent right. The case finally said, the court issued an order saying that authors the publishers like Time and aggregators like Dialogue and ProQuest and all that were aggregated. This was largely for the news magazines and newspapers, etc. It said that the rights for collected works and rights for individual copyright is very different. People who publish the journals, newspapers, and magazines have no right to repurpose it through another medium. Now, this happened in 1995. I think there's a big window between a particular date, I think somewhere between 1970 and 1995. I can tell you every article can be digitized every article published in any American journal, because we don't know what could be the thinking in other countries, can be digitized. So that is one thing. The other thing is, of course, well, the library can digitize only for its own purpose, but if at all anybody is going to ask, you can also digitize. If at all anybody is going to ask, only author will have to ask. Which author is going to ask a library if the library does it only for its own internal purpose of its users and not for any kind of a commercial purpose or wider distribution? So I feel one interesting thing is there are a lot of journals which are what I call seized. They are no longer published, very good journals, and they will never see the light of the day unless some initiative is there to pick up all of them in the libraries and digitize and make available in a closed user network.
Okay. This is last question. Probably you need a short answer for that. This is from fellow NCSN, Dr. Vijayananda Pradhan. He says that there is so much developments are happening in open access and open access publishing. Still, why monopoly from the commercial publishers? When is it's going to be ending, or at least some pushback for that?
The monopoly is primarily because the authors have given away their copyright exclusively to publishers.
Okay.
So monopoly can be broken only if the rights are non-exclusive in nature. And when it is non-exclusive in nature, competition will take over.
Okay. So thank you for your elaborated answers, sir. It's time for me to bid adieu. And just before I start my vote of thanks, open access started somewhere in early 90s. So the pioneers were George Soros, Stephen Harnard, and Subbiah Arunachalam, Peter Subber, our own Dr. Rajashekar, and many other, John Wilinski and Alma Swan, all these things. So it's also have taken a lot of steps like PLOS, where independent publishing started opening, and open journal systems have taken up by PKP publishing. All these things have given way to the growth of open access. Within the commercial publishing has taken 350 years to grow to 1 lakh journals. Today, with just 25-26 years, the open access journals have grown to more than 15,000-16,000, which you can see in the DOAJ. So the lecture started with open access, and there was special issue published by Deciduck Journal in the year 2008, special issue, where all these notable authors have written articles, and also there was an article by Waldrop in Scientific American on Science 2.0, which has encouraged or which has motivated me to take up this research, and that's the reason we have taken this step. And Rajashekar was pioneering, and he was the guiding light for us. So of course, Subbiah Arunachalam is another personality. We have seen him since 25-26 years. When he used to come to NCSI, sit next to us, we used to search for him, and all those things. So I take this opportunity to thank Dr. Subbiah Arunachalam. He's also called as Dr. Arun, or we call him as Indian Mr. Open Access, or Indian Garfield in scientometrics and bibliometric studies. He's one of the notable authors. Even today, he's working on those areas at the age of almost 80. So he, along with Peter Subber, Stephen Harnard, they have worked together a lot, and still he is working on that area. And we thank Professor Subbiah Arunachalam for taking his time out and presiding this session on behalf of NCSNet, on behalf of all fellow NCSA Foundation members, on behalf of Informatics India Limited. We wholeheartedly thank Professor Subbiah Arunachalam for accepting to preside over this session and sharing his valuable feedback with us. So, Mr. Sathyanarayana, as rightly said in the beginning, he needs no introduction. He is a guiding light especially for me. So he is the most updated list professionals, and also he is the one who is introduced CD-ROM to Indian Library and Information Science professionals at least 30-35 years back. So he spoke on the topic, able topic on status of open access, where it is standing now and where it is heading towards, and with he is known for his insights. Satya is known for his insight, and we have got a lot of information from his insights. And he has ably, discussed on open access growth and its dimensions and data on organizations and issues in open access. The best thing he has spoken about is Plan S, which is a great initiative can lead to India to towards open access movement. And his insights on cost and price were commendable. So he has touched upon all the areas of open access, though he's a businessman, but he for us he is a scholar. And I think when we thought about organizing this TBR Memorial Seminars, it's almost 15 years we have been organizing. We thought none other than Satya is the best person for this. So, and Satya has agreed for this, and we thank Satya amidst his busy schedule. He has came here, spent his 1.5 hours, 2 hours of time, so, and spoke about us and his experiences with NCSI, his experiences with Dr. Rajashekar, and he's a guru for all of us. And we thank, on behalf of NCSI-NET, on behalf of Informatics, we thank him wholeheartedly for the session and the lecture he has delivered. So the Informatics will take care of all the certifications and other things. So we you will get a separate probably notification on that. So I thank all the members of NCSI-NET and all the Dr. Francis separately, because he is the guiding force for us. Dr. Anand, who has provided all the leadership support for this NCSI-NET, and all the other NCSI-NET members as well as trustees of NCSI-NET. And we thank all the participants. So we thank all for attending this, and I'm sure you have carried something back from this lecture today. And we thank Informatics India Limited for extending their support for all the Zoom and recording. This recording will be hosted later on to suitable channels for everybody's benefit. So we thank all, and we thank everyone who are here. Without the participants, this program would have not been a success. We thank all. Let's meet again during NCSI TBR seminar, probably in the month of November. Thank you. Have a nice time.